The views and opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect those of Access Fort Wayne, the Allen County Public Library, or any other supporting groups. If you'd like to produce a show, call us at 260-421-1250.
All music that is truly derived from African heritage contain that unique ancient wail of the soul, that shout, that release, that unabashed cry of the heart which links us with our brothers and sisters of the past. Now, some will say it's caused by environmental and social factors, whatever. However and wherever, for me, its essence must be tapped. You can't know where you're going until you know where you've been. And waiting is the spirit of ages that is and always will be the ancient source.
Hello and welcome to Ancestors and Answers. My name is Roberta Ridley, Chairwoman of the African American Genealogical Society of Fort Wayne, and I thank you for taking time out of your busy day or evening, whichever it may be for you, and joining us for what I hope to be a very informative and exciting. I think it's exciting because it's all about the kickoff information for the things that we do with the African American Genealogical Society, and with bringing tidbits of things that are a part of the genealogy travel. That being said, tonight's program is focused on a review of celebrating the life of Roosevelt Barnes Sr., who was a pioneering African American contractor here in Fort Wayne. And joining me to have that discussion is Ms. Connie Haas Zuber with Arch. Do I say Arch United or Arch?
It's Arch Inc. Just
Inc.
to be, if
okay.
you want to be real formal.
I want to
about
be
it.
real formal.
Okay, we'll be Arch
okay,
Inc.
with
tonight,
Arch
then.
Inc. Okay, and Connie, thank you so much for joining me out of your ever so busy day.
Well, I'm glad to join you today, and I'm glad to join you in this work. It's been very fulfilling.
You know, I have to agree with you. You know, you agree to do some things sometimes, and you think, what have I done? You know, I'm not getting anything out of it. But this has been actually kind of exciting, I think I want to say. Would you?
I completely agree, and I've been learning things, and it's what more can you ask?
Yeah, yeah. And my father used to always say, if you go to bed tonight and you didn't learn anything today, then there's not much point in looking forward to tomorrow. So make every day worthwhile. Make every day a learning experience towards your purpose and what you're doing.
Exactly.
And I think that's what we've done. So again, I thank you for joining me on the program today. We are together a part of the Fort Wayne Committee of the Indiana Landmarks Black Heritage Preservation Program. Me coming from the African American Genealogical Society, and you with Arch Incorporated, which has a very deep history in our community. Tell us a little bit about you and your job.
Arch is the historic preservation nonprofit that has been serving Fort Wayne, the Fort Wayne area, and of late all of Northeast Indiana since 1975. We're almost 50 years old.
Oh, okay.
And historic preservation is what Indiana Landmarks, the organization for whom we are the local committee for this work, is all about. Historic preservation preserves the built heritage of our communities. And I am excited to do that kind of work because in the built heritage, I see the stories of us all. And those stories are what connect me to place. They're what connect me to my neighbors. They're what connect my family to the community and neighbors and friends. And they're what makes this place itself, gives it its unique identity. Buildings can be built to look like each other, but the stories of what happened there and who was there and did what, that's what makes it special and that's what makes it unique. And that's what is honestly thrilling and exciting to me about this work of historic preservation. And it's, I think, probably the same thing that gets you all excited as genealogists when you're learning the things that are those particular individual things
Absolutely.
that tell the story.
Absolutely. And it's funny because you can have a moment of excitement from a discovery or an observation that's a part of history, be it personal, cultural, or someone else's walk in life. But when you start gathering the information and seeing what it evolved into and where we are today because of it, it does get to be exciting. Call me a geek, call me a history buff or whatever, but it's very personal. It is very personal for us when we have that opportunity to connect to our own stories and our community stories. And this is what this project has been.
It really is. And I will say once again that having the actual places where things happened still be there for us is an important part of that connection. And at the very least, knowing the stories of what happened where and when is just essential to our health and vitality as a community.
And when we have the opportunity to do the research and sort of connect with the other people and their story, that's what Roosevelt Barnes Sr. has done for all of us that have been involved in this research, the people that are in the homes, some people who have owned the homes and moved on, some people who have owned the homes and are still there, sharing their story with us about what this pioneering African-American contractor did here in Fort Wayne. And his story that we were able to share with the community on September 26th was exciting to me to share it with the community from his daughter's perspective in particular. Thank you. So there you have Mr. Roosevelt Barnes. And beside that handsome picture of Mr. Barnes is a graphic of the Southern Heights area that he developed as a young contractor here in Fort Wayne when he had to go up against all sorts of odds within the community during that time period. We're talking about redlining at its absolute peak, so to speak.
And segregation and discrimination, because he started work in 1957 and he worked into the 70s in this neighborhood. And though there were a few black families there when he began work, there weren't very many. And there was resistance, both for having more black families move into the neighborhood, and there was resistance against having a black contractor and his black subcontractors working in the neighborhood, and there was resistance toward having financing for that sort of work going on. He called them challenges because that's the kind of man he was, and he saw them as challenges to be overcome, and he obviously did, because all of those pink spaces on that map are homes that he ended up building despite the odds.
And I think that again, I mentioned it earlier, noteworthy to indicate how many of those homes that he built during that time have carried over from generation to generation as homeowners. A pride that the family took in the fact that they bought land and had those homes built, and that they raised their families there in those homes, and their children came on and took over the property after the parents had passed away and such. And there's so many wonderful stories that people shared with our team to help us understand what they felt, how they connected to the property. Mr. Barnes himself, being an immigrant out of Alabama, Perry County, Alabama, and offering work to so many people in the community to be employed and to own homes as well. And the way he gained the respect of the overall community here in Fort Wayne as a result of the magnificent work that he did.
Yes, one of the wonderful things people told us was he earned a very high reputation as a home builder, and he actually has houses sprinkled all over the town because there were people who wanted a Roosevelt Barnes house because he built good houses.
And isn't that something to have in your repertoire?
Yes,
so
it
to
is.
speak?
Yes,
If
it is.
you have a bio, then you want to be able to share. I want to pause right here, holding on to the image that's in front of you. We are not only do I chair the African American Genealogical Society of Fort Wayne, but coming into this opportunity to have a committee here in Fort Wayne representing the Indiana Landmarks Black Heritage Preservation Program, Fort Wayne Committee. Known Connie, visited with Connie a few times, off the track of what I do as far as a genealogist, but then having the privilege to work with Connie as a committee member, and well, her knowledge of what's necessary to get these things documented into national registration as historical has been eye-opening. It has been, it has been challenging at times, but it's about coming together within the community to do what needs to be done with the community. And along with Ms. Connie Haas Zuber on our committee is our very own Chief Condra Ridley, Ngozi Rogers, Marcia Smiley, and Adrian Wells, who is, these are all people that worked on the committee. And I probably want to talk about, we kind of jumped into this kind of fast, didn't talk about the partners, did we?
No, we didn't, but
Yeah.
we have partners,
Yeah.
and each of us brings expertise that is necessary. For example, that map with the pink spaces on it we showed you is on display at the African American Historical Society Museum because we relied heavily on what they know about Roosevelt Barnes and his work to get us started. So that's why, as you see on the screen right now, the Historical Society Museum is one of the key partner organizations for this effort. We started there. We spent time.
Yeah, yes, we did.
Really studied that exhibit.
Yes, we did. And they allowed us time to come in and detail the presentation that they had, utilize the photographs that they had taken in the past to do the Roosevelt Barnes presentation. So that was really an awesome opportunity. And we thank them for their hospitality and for their support in this program as well. We also had, well, Connie was there and I was there and the museum people were there, so which is why we're partnered. But we also want to give major kudos to Miss Eunice Trotter, who is director of this particular organization coming out of Indianapolis. And she has, when she contacted me about working on this project, I was like, oh, I don't know, what I know? I didn't, you know, I research and I make note of a lot of things. There's a million almost other projects that I could come up with, but wow, I didn't think of this one. Eunice said, hey, what about the historic places in Fort Wayne? Well, I have thought about it, made all kind of notes about it, but to have a project, she put Connie and I together.
She did indeed, because I've known Eunice too, because I've worked with her before on other things, and she and the program that Indiana Landmarks has funding for through the Lilly Foundation and other sources is making a big difference here in Fort Wayne. And I should also note that we are one of several committees doing this work statewide.
Right.
I'm proud to say that Eunice thinks we're the best so far, so we're very proud, and we are working hard to maintain that distinction.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I wish everyone else the very best, but,
Yes, yes.
but we are very proud that,
Yes.
that Eunice is so proud of us. So.
Well, I would have to pause and say in that, you know, since, you know, she hit me between the eyes with the request, and I'm trying to figure out who do I get, you know, to be on this committee? Who can I count on to do it? So she asked me, she said, well, do you know Connie Haas Zuber? I said, yes, I do. She says, well, you know, she's with, I said, I know, you know, I know who she is. And I said, you want me to work with Connie does Connie want to work with me? You know, that kind of a thing. So right there, we started building a group of people. So I have to say that I'm just speechless over the committee that we have, because they have worked very, very hard collecting this information from the people in the community to move forward. And we have other things to present.
We do indeed, but even just all the work that's gone into how far we have gotten on Roosevelt Barns, we have to mention the contributions of Marcia Smiley, who is just a fabulous historian and writer. And we have to mention that that Condra Ridley and Ngozi Rogers did a lot of work doing the photography for the survey we're doing in Southern Heights.
Footwork like crazy.
Footwork like crazy, and working with people. And Marcia also has a real gift for that. And we have riches of information that hadn't been pulled together before, thanks to the efforts of these people. So this is precious stuff that we're pulling together through this committee and the support of the program.
Our historian, Adrian Wells, our historian from our society, who is kind of a quiet background guy, but knows all sorts of little tricks and things.
And when we're stuck during a meeting, all of a sudden he pops up with, oh no, it's this. We're Thank you, Adrian.
Yeah. So let's, I want to take a look at that home of Mr. Barnes that we had, the Barnes home. And did I hear this correctly? There's so much conversation we've had. He built quite a few other homes before he built his own.
I think that's a tribute to this. He was an unassuming man. And so when you get down to it, it's not really surprising that he built several other houses for other people before he built a new home for his family and moved into Southern Heights. People need to understand that the whole point of this was he wanted to build upscale, modern, new homes for black families that weren't otherwise available to them.
That otherwise were not being built and would not build.
No one would build them or sell them to black families otherwise, is the point we are
that's the point
bluntly selling.
Right.
Bluntly saying. Yeah. And so here is the house that he built for himself. It is just a nice ranch house from the street view. When you look at it from around the side, there's a really dramatic angled roof toward the back. I am told that there's 2 chimneys on it, so I think that means there's 2 fireplaces.
Right.
We are told it has a lovely basement. And had the classic, rec room down there for when the kids were growing up. We have memories from one of the other Barnes home families about playing that electric football game as kids down there. So this house is packed with memories. And you can see it's still a lovely home. And this is, homes that were built as late as 1973 are now 50 years old. And according to National Park Service, National Register of Historic Places criteria, that makes you old enough to be considered historic and therefore able to be considered at least for the National Register of Historic Places. So voila, there is a historic house that can at least be considered for the National Register of Historic Places. So guess what we're thinking about doing?
That's exactly what we're thinking about doing. And eventually, when everything is said and done, what an honor to be in a home that has that classification connected to this honorable individual in our community who was so and still is so highly respected for the craftsmanship and work ethic that he brought to the table.
Exactly. As the historic preservationist in the room, I would like to say that I think we should try to go for an entire neighborhood designation.
I do too.
And we'll see what we can make of this, because there, as we said, there are a number of these houses in the neighborhood. They are holding up very well. A few of them have new work going on there now as people are renovating and fixing up and doing things, but the majority of them have just been well cared for all along, and they're just nice, different kinds of ranch houses. There's split levels, there's a couple, 2 stories. Most of them are just different, interesting kinds of ranch houses.
Okay. Well, I think, and we could probably go on, but we'll probably come back to the table at a later time.
We will have more to say about
Updates
this.
on what
I
we're
can
doing
guarantee
with that. One of the other homes that we want to talk about, I kind of got these out of order a little bit,
That's okay.
but
I think
we have an image of the Graham home. If we could take a look at that. Thank you so much. Go ahead, Connie.
Yes, when we talked about the other Barnes homes scattered about the city, well, this one is scattered about Allen County. This home is known as the Hill because it sits on top of a high hill overlooking US 24 West on the west edge of Allen County. Roosevelt Barnes Sr. built this for Dr. James and Marjorie Graham, who were people who were investors with his company, and he obviously knew and worked with them well. But this is, we think of this as Mr. Barnes's masterpiece. It's big, it's beautifully appointed, it's a very nice house, and it's still a wonderful place to live. In a wonderful place with a beautiful setting up there on that hill.
Right. Oh yes. Which is why
I remember when I first moved to Fort Wayne, which was back in the 1970s, probably when this house was still fairly new, there was a sign down at the end of the long driveway by the highway that said modestly, the Hill. I'm going, I want to know about that house. And now I'm learning about it. It's wonderful.
Is that right?
Yes.
I remember us talking about that.
No, I don't think I told you
about
that
a lot
before.
of things where we were on a mission, right?
We were on a mission, yeah.
It wasn't personal.
And there was always something else to talk about.
Yeah, always. So we are going to do some additional research on this particular property by Mr. Barnes and feature a little history along with the architecture involved. And we're looking forward to conversating with the family and hopefully the family that occupies the house now, because as I understand it, it is no longer
in the Graham
property,
family, yeah.
Right? But it's still a historic home connected to Mr. Roosevelt Barnes Sr., and it is very worthy of being identified as his diamond in the Midwest.
Yes, it is.
So we look forward to having that experience with the family. I want to inject here also that it was truly an honor to have his family in practically in full attendance for the program as we celebrated Mr. Roosevelt Barnes Sr. and the memories that Anne in particular shared with us, and understandably so, her very emotional reflection on understanding what he brought to the table for the family and for historic purposes at this time, being able to reflect on the things that her father put before them as children and the values that he put before them. Work ethic. Can I say that again? Work ethic, okay? And it appears as though that's something that has prevailed in the family, and I have to say that
I would say that, yes.
with a horrendous amount of respect. We also want, so we're going to be moving forward. We're going to be doing some more interviews. We're going to share some more stories down the line on what Mr. Roosevelt Barnes Sr. brought to the table here in Fort Wayne for African American families and to the community as a whole. I have to say that, you know, from my genealogical perspective, that when you have communities that have experienced rejection, racism, redlining connected to that racism, and people who have worked very hard to have the homes and properties that they deserve to have, having worked like everyone else, to have a man like this step up to the plate and said, you know, hey, this is what we're going to do, and this is how we're going to do it, and had to, he had to face the harsh realities of what he had to survive in order to do this. I think it's a part of the genealogy story. It's a part of our community story, and it most assuredly should be shared for everyone to know how it happened and why we are doing what we're doing. So it is not just an honor, but a necessity that we have this partnership to do what has to be done.
I would agree with you on the necessity part of it, because the longer stories like this go not being told, the wider the kind of the hole in our hearts gets, because there's an emptiness there, and it's still a space, because we know there's something that should be there, but we don't have it, and we can't put it there. And once we have the stories, then we know what goes there, and we can deal with it, and we can come together, and we can move on.
Right, right. But if we don't share our stories, nobody really knows how you feel about what happened and how it happened, and
you
why.
don't know how you feel, but you don't know what happened.
Right, right. Especially if you weren't a part of it, you may not know, because we are talking generations removed from the action that took place at that time in between 1957 and 1979. Or so?
Somewhere in there.
Okay.
You know, the way his daughter tells it, he wasn't very good at retiring, so he kept doing things.
Yes, she did. She did share some very humorous tales to that end, and I think that the other part of it that I haven't mentioned, and that we did discuss, is not just the fact that he was a contractor. He was an employer. He was an employer of many people in this community who worked for Mr. Roosevelt Barnes, who fed their families and were able to keep a roof over their heads as a result, who would not have been able to get those jobs with other companies in this community.
Probably.
So
yes.
that is most okay. And it looks like we have a call coming in on today's program. If you could go ahead and put that through for us, sir. Go ahead, caller.
Oh, good evening. This is Condra Ridley. I'm calling just to give my commendation of all the great things that the Indiana
Give us a minute.
Landmarks Black Heritage
do we have a
Preservation
connection yet?
Project is doing. Okay, can you hear me? Hello?
It's a good time for somebody to come. I'm not hearing anything yet.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Hi there.
Hey,
Thank you.
Good evening. Hi, this is Condra Ridley calling in to just give you all of my commendations for such a great work that you did with the event for Mr. Barnes last week. It was so great.
Thank you so much, Chief. But I think this is where we pause and say thank you.
Yes, for your contributions to all the work that went into that.
We could not sit here at this table and have this conversation without the work that you and Ngozi Rogers, and was there someone, Marcia Smiley, out there in the field talking to these people? Can you tell us, since we're fortunate enough to have you on the line, some of the comments that you received from the people that you were asking about them owning these homes? What was their feedback on that?
I think the overall feel that I had for them was, now looking back on the time, they too realized how dynamic a moment it was for them to be involved in that project. Oftentimes I think when we're doing things, we're so busy working and raising children and, working jobs and doing all the things that we have to do to make it through everyday life. We don't realize that we're involved in history-making events. And now that they have reached that certain age where they can look back and wonder at how they made it over, they were quite pleased that we were there to try to gather the stories and hear from them what it was like to live in that area and be involved in that particular development as it was growing. It was great. And I think the person who touched me most was Mr. Ivy Lowe, who is one of the longest standing residents out there, and also Mr. Charles Kamak. Both of them just had such rich stories to share about how they acquired the land and the development and just the things that have gone on over the years. Really, really good, rich history on the way the families worked together and helped each other and just enjoyed being in that area, living together.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I have to piggyback onto that and say that during the celebration of September the 26th, having met Mr. Ivy Lowe and Mr. Kamak. It was very interesting, and it was I don't know what the right word, but just joyful.
I think joyful is a very good. I felt joyful that night.
Yeah,
I really did. It was something of a reunion,
Yes.
sort of, but it had a little different edge because there were so many different families, and then they had this wonderful common project and their interactions with Mr. Barnes. And I think Mr. Barnes really, we put a wonderful light on him, and he was a shining star all by himself anyway. And just to be able to hear people talk about him and how hard he worked and what his work ethic was like and how much he did to try to encourage other young men to get into the contracting business and develop themselves and just do things positively in the community. It was very, very, very enriching for me. I enjoyed it thoroughly.
At the end of the night, I was really convinced that the September 26th program proved that Roosevelt Barnes had created the neighborhood of his dreams, that he really dreamed for. He really wanted to create that kind of life for the people who lived in those homes, and he did. It worked.
It's evident. It is
That's
evident
amazing.
by the stories that were shared that evening, by the various comments that you and the team, the committee team put together from the interviews that you did with the various families, and the fact that most of that property has passed on to the next generation. I mentioned that earlier.
Many homes have, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
That's really great. I don't know, I haven't done the math yet to see what percentage of those homes have stayed in the original families, but I think it's pretty high.
Yeah. Well, we'll have that figure coming up sometime in the
Well,
near future.
put that down on your notes for tomorrow's meeting. We'll add that to the to-do list.
That's good. That's a good one. Yes, I'd like to know that. But it's just a beautiful area, and to see that it is still so well preserved even today.
That's good too.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yes,
It shows
because
that the
I don't-
people who are in those homes appreciated them.
Yes, indeed. They had value, and they have increased in value. And that's wonderful. I love
Awesome.
that. And one thing that I noticed as I was going around with Ngozi back in August taking those pictures, there were no homes that were boarded up out there. I think the people who have taken them on, they have improved them. You know, some things have been added. It's quite the place to see, and I'm looking forward to how the rest of the community will respond once we do get it declared, and I'm really, really excited about that opportunity.
Well, I'm sure that once we get that classification from it, we'll have another great celebration.
We'll have a really big one.
Well, thank you, Chief Conda Ridley, for joining us
Thank
and
you
for your
so,
comments.
and I just look forward to the continuation of this project as we strive to preserve the history of African American people in this community. It's a great work, and thank you both, Roberta and Connie, for your leadership. Both of you we're doing a great job collaborating and putting our best energies together. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
So, that is a good way to end the Barnes conversation.
It is a very good way to end the Barnes conversation. We do need to leave ourselves time to confess that we have even more things up our sleeves.
Yes, because we are talking about the fact that we are the Fort Wayne Committee, again, for the Indiana Landmarks Black Heritage Preservation Program. And it won't just stop with Mr. Roosevelt Barnes.
As worthy a project as that is,
Yes.
it is not the only worthy project in Fort Wayne.
It's an honorable one to kick off with, though. So what we have next to share with you is a property that was owned, which was built for Dr. Theodore and Beatrice Borders. And if we could take a look at that one. That is Dr. Theodore and Beatrice Borders' home.
There it is.
Currently, that home is still alive and kicking also. It is located at the intersection of Nevada Avenue and North Anthony Boulevard. And what you have in front of you is the image of the Borders family -1. We apologize for that memory, but let's just take a look at what we do have. First of all, Dr. Theodore Borders himself, and right below him, the Honorable Mrs. Beatrice Borders, and up top beside Doctor is Arthur Borders, and below him, his daughter, Diane Borders Rosellis. I think I'm saying it right. Is that Rosellis?
Well, that's what we're going
Okay,
with.
that's what we're going to go with, okay? And again, that home is located at the intersection of Nevada Avenue and North Anthony Boulevard. Okay, you're saying, Ann, what about it? Okay. What's so significant about this house? This home was built in 1952, I believe is the right year. 52 or 53.
I didn't write that down, sorry.
That's okay. I have it written down 1,000 times, but do you think? Okay. But I actually had the privilege of attending high school with Art Borders. He was older than myself, of course, upperclassman, if you will. And Dr. Borders was an African-American doctor who came to Fort Wayne many, many years after the first African-American doctor did. But Dr. Borders came, and I believe the year is 1938. I've talked about him before on other programs that I've done. But Dr. Borders came to Fort Wayne, establishing a family practice, and he and his wife, his lovely wife, who was equally as educated as himself, wanted to build a home here in Fort Wayne, and so they bought property, land, if you will, at this location at the intersection of Nevada and North Anthony Boulevard. When they presented the architectural design for the home that they wanted to build there, it was rejected by the city as being too large. Further, there was no one that wanted to take on the contract to build the home that they wanted. That made it very difficult. You know, he paid cash for the land. That information is documented. And he wanted the house that he wanted the house because he could afford to have it built. But there was rejection. There was redlining. There was racism. There were protests where they marched against him actually having a home north of the Anthony Bridge. And yet and still, this home is there. We have quite a story that comes along with Dr. Borders and family's home. And that big part of that story is that Dr. Borders and his wife had a connection in California with a national, I should say internationally known.
Very big.
Okay, internationally known architect who we are most excited to bring into our presentation about Dr. Theodore and Beatrice Borders' home. And that individual is Mr. Paul R. Williams. He was a trailblazing architect whose career spanned more than 5 decades, and encompassed more than 3,000 designed structures. He became the first black member of the American Institute of Architects in 1957, and he was the first black member to be inducted into the Institute College of Fellows. Would you care to add a little bit more about Mr. Paul Revere?
He had a very interesting clientele from his Los Angeles office. His the kind of little underline you see when he's being talked about is architect to the stars. Mm-hmm. He did projects for people like Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz. I think he had John Wayne among his clients.
Frank Sinatra.
Frank Sinatra. I mean, you know, just go on and look at it. And his design, his remodeling, I think it was, of the Beverly Hills Hotel is very famous.
Right, that and Saks Fifth Avenue.
Saks Fifth Avenue, big numbers. For many years, he was designing homes for people and homes and places that he himself was not allowed to live. And that's just the kind of circumstances Mr. Williams, and just like Mr. Barnes back here, was living in.
Right.
But the Borders knew about Paul Revere Williams, and they had him design a home for them. And they figured out how to make it happen.
Yes, and we'll get into that in a future program.
Well, and the key thing is, here is this very famous, nationally, if not internationally known architect, and this house on Nevada Avenue in Fort Wayne, Indiana, is the only Paul Revere Williams house that we know of in the entire state of Indiana. The state historic preservation people are quite excited about that.
As they should be.
We agree. We agree.
And we're more than happy to bring it to their attention in full disclosure.
Yes.
For what I want to thank Diane Borders Rosellas. She is not in Fort Wayne anymore, and unfortunately not in the home anymore. But that also is a topic for discussion at a later time. But she has come on board to help us with the research that we're going to do on her grandparents' home and legacy that should have remained in the family, but we have it to preserve in history and hope to be able to add it to the collection of the National Registry for homes that were built by Paul Revere Williams here in this area. And we're very fortunate to have a design and structure of this capacity here and to add it to the National Register. And we're going to do that with the guidance of the Almighty to accomplish what it needs to be accomplished there. So the next time you're driving down North Anthony Boulevard as you approach Nevada, please take a glance to your right and look at this home and know that that is history and what Dr. Borders had to endure in order to build this house. I want to squeeze it in here that he had to downscale the design and size of the home before it was accepted to finish, to actually do the construction where it was. Said it was, what he had in mind was too big. Another conversation over a cup of tea, okay?
Okay.
So we're going to be doing that, and you'll want to stay tuned, watch what it is we have coming through on our Facebook page and media disclosure for what is happening with the Indiana Landmarks Black Heritage Preservation Program and the properties in Fort Wayne. The next one that we have coming up is what should I say, old but new?
Old but new.
Okay.
That's good.
I think that's a good way to put it. Turner Chapel AME Church. Turner Chapel AME Church is the first African American church built in the city for African American citizens. The church was established in 1846, and they had a structure that was donated to them at a different location, and then they bought land at Francis and Wayne Street. And the church was, what's the word I want to say? It was dedicated in 1918, April I think it was of 1918, when it was finished. That building that sits at the corner of Wayne and Francis, which is now the East Wayne Street Center, was dedicated in 1918 after the African American community had collected nickels and dimes and bricks and stone and wood and did all sorts of laborious work in order to have a facility for African American people to be able to gather and worship, to learn, because school took place in that building not that building in particular, but the original building, and then on into this time period when additional education and programs to help people to learn how to learn things to get a job and to be able to have an opportunity for employment and other skills that were necessary for survival within the community. It is truly a historic building, truly a historic building that needs to be preserved and acknowledged for what it represents as the first African American church established for African Americans here in Fort Wayne. Now, that's the building that started off as Turner Chapel AME.
Right.
And we know that the congregation, I guess, sold that building and then moved to Jefferson Street.
Moved to Jefferson Street, where the building that the congregation currently occupies is also old and historic and is now on the National Register of Historic Places, which is fine. That's more historic buildings. So it gets a little tricky talking about Turner Chapel AME Church when you have two locations associated with it, which is why we're being careful to be specific that the building we're talking about right now that also should be on the National Register is the original Turner Chapel AME Church.
Absolutely.
Now used as the East Wayne Street Center. But that's the thing about these old historic buildings. By and large, they were built to last, and they are perfectly capable of going on and serving us for decades and decades and decades if you take care of them. And they're going to become something else sometime in their future. Somebody else is going to use them. Somebody else is using the original Turner Chapel AME Church right now for very good purpose. And it doesn't detract at all from the, I think, necessity
I agree.
and rightness of recognizing this building as historic and important and significant and should be on the National Register. So that is on our work list. We're gathering ourselves to find the time and the energy to do that. And our committee is currently a good size, but very busy. And if there's anybody else who gets really inspired by hearing this, we are open to having more hands on deck.
And I thank you for opening up that part of the discussion, because that's exactly where we were headed, because this is a great undertaking, and it has to be a commitment of love for what we do and what you would do if you were to come on board. There's always information that needs to be gathered, stories that need to be collected, photographs, things of that nature. And I think when we talk about Turner Chapel AME, the church is not in that building anymore. It's not in the East Wayne Street Center, but the structure itself is pretty much intact in terms of how they built it to be a sanctuary for the congregation during that time period. And so information about or photographs of what took place in the church while you were a member is certainly welcome to this collection. Photographs that you may have taken outside of the church at special events, also very important. I have quite a collection myself of newspaper articles of events that took place in the church, people who visited the church, and what kinds of things they were focused on. And these are meetings for African American people in the community that could only be held at the church. And so this is a part of its very, very rich and strong history that needs to be preserved. We have I think there's a marker out that talks about, the dedication of the church, the origin of the church in its beginning. But we wanted to go another step further, and based on the fact that the two structures are not together right now, as I understood it, it requires separate designation, thank you, for national registration. So it's very important that we do this work. To those of us, it's not just about it's not just about the African American community, it's about the Fort Wayne community as a whole. How we evolved to where we are today, being able to share our stories with each other and to understand the significance of sharing those stories as well as the history attached to those stories. I'd be lying if I said that I don't have a personal interest in this. You know, I have shared it with many people. It is a church that my own family is very, very much involved in. I do not attend Turner Chapel. No one out there needs to get upset with me about that. But, you know, my father chose to go Lutheran, but my history is attached to my grandmother as a member of that church, my great-grandmother and grandfather, on back to the arrival of my Ridley family coming to Fort Wayne in 1869. So that attachment is a very, very long history. And from that end, lots of information that I myself have to share with our committee to say what was taking place during that time. But the point of the matter is, it is on our list, and we're going to keep the rest of our list a little bit of a secret right now.
Well, and also while noting that it's an open-ended list, because
Yes.
we are delighted to say that the Black Heritage Preservation Program is a multi-year program.
Yes.
So this isn't just a one and done kind of thing. We're beginning the work now, and we have time ahead of us to do more and more and more.
And should it be that I'm not able to finish one or see the end of the great works that we've chosen, it's
We want
important.
other people to step forward and
Yeah.
carry it on.
Yes, we do. So we want you to be informed. We want you to be aware of what's taking place. And again, I have to reiterate here that, yes, this is a genealogy situation, because there are families attached to all of this who have a story to share because they are attached to these landmark entities that we're talking about today. So I know that we are nearing our time of pleasure and discussion. We hope to have an online presence for the work that we've done so far.
We will. Landmarks is arranging an online home for us to post a lot of the information, and as soon as that is available and we have our information in place there, we will be announcing that, and all the genealogists can link to it and have the pictures available and have the information available and take advantage of all of the work that this committee has done, because it's going to be for everyone.
Yes, yes, it is. It's a Fort Wayne story. It is a Fort Wayne African American story, but it is a Fort Wayne story because it talks it really does address Fort Wayne's growth, development of understanding of culture, and the necessity of having an understanding of culture, and the impact that separation created, and what came out of it as a result. So I again thank you, Connie, Haas, Zuber, for being a part of the committee and working with us the way that you have. And you did a lot of work that allowed us to move forward. I know that my team did a lot of work in order for you to have something to work with. And so again, I want to say Condra Ridley, Ngozi Rogers, Marcia Smiley, Adrian Wells, and Connie. Thank you.
Well, you're
Thank you.
welcome, and thank you. It has been work. It's good work. It's actually been a delight to do.
It has been. And I am looking so forward to the next leg of our work, a little bit of review and celebration for what we've done so far, but know that we can't can't get too relaxed. We got to keep our arms up and in flight, right? Okay. So to everyone out there that are listened this evening, I thank you for your attention to us this evening. and that you will take into consideration the information that we have shared. If there's something that you would like to provide to us, then you can always contact us through the African American Genealogical Society. We are available on Facebook. We also have email, and that is the AAGSFW@gmail.com. And please send your information to us, your questions, your queries as such. If you're interested in volunteering to get involved, there's all sorts of things that we could talk about that additional help would be nice. And that is something you can even talk to Connie about, contacting her at Arch. And would you prefer email or phone?
Either one. The phone number is 426-5117, and you can contact me by email at Arch at director@archfw.org.
Okay. Connie, thank you for honing out this time in your evening. I appreciate you beyond. And
Glad to be here.
again, Connie Haas Zuber and Roberta Ridley, we thank you. Have a great evening, and keep the stories coming, keep the genealogy stories developing, because we want to give voice to the ancestors, and we have done that with Mr. Roosevelt Barnes, and we'll continue to develop the rest of his story. Thank you so much.
Someplace deep inside, you know I feel a haunting. It's there in every way. I feel the ancient calling. I hear it in the drums. Yeah, I write it in my melodies. I feel it when I sing. Yeah, there's no need to deny it. Oh, I've got to pass a message down. Round.